So as you can see, this is the USB connectors. So we have two connectors in this motherboard, and here we have the USB connector circuit. Okay, so here we have a chemical capacitor or polarized capacitor. As you can see, we have here a ceramic capacitor, an IC, a fuse, and an inductor. For this connector also we have a chemical capacitor, an IC, a fuse, and an inductor. Okay? This component are the component that you have to check if you have a failed USB connector. Okay? So here, as you can see in the schematic, this is the USB connector circuit diagram. As you can see here, we have USB connector 1. Okay, so we have here 4 pins. As you can see, always the pin number 1 is for VCC. Okay, as you can see here in the motherboard, we have here 1, means here this is the pin number 1 over here. Okay, in other motherboard you can find a mark like this, a triangle, means this is pin number 1. Okay, here we have pin number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Always the pin number 4 is connected to the ground, exactly as you can see here. Always the pin number 4 is connected to the ground. Okay, and pin number 1 is connected to the VCC, as you can see. So you can check the 5 volt in the pin number 1 or in this capacitor. As you can see here, we have plus. Okay, because the plus of this capacitor is connected directly to the pin number 1, as you can see. Okay, so let's go back to the schematic. As you can see, so we have the USB connector. Okay, and here, as you can see, we have the IC. This IC is the responsible for generating USB VCC, as you can see. This IC take a 5 volt, a normal 5 volt, and generate a USB VCC that is equal to 5 volt. This 5 volt will be applied to a chemical capacitor or to a polarized capacitor with 6.3 volt, as you can see, and we will get a filtered voltage 5 volt. Okay, so that's why if you want to check the USB connector, you can check the voltage in the pin number 1 or either in the plus of the chemical capacitor. Here, for example, you can check 5 volt here in the pin number 1 or here in the plus of this capacitor. The same for this, you can check 5 volt here or here. Okay, then we have here, as you can see, D minus and D plus. This is the data, as you can see here. So this signal passes through an inductor, as you can see, and comes from the ICH. Here the 16 is where the ICH exists. Okay, so if you have problem in the USB connector, what you should check? First, you should check here these terminals, these 4 terminals inside the USB connector, and check whether this terminals is in good shape or not. If you find this terminal are damaged, you should replace the whole connector. Also, you should check, as you can see here, these pins here and the soldering. If the soldering is bad, you should put another good soldering. Okay, and then go ahead and check the fuse. As you can see here, we have the fuse. Here also we have the fuse for this connector. Check the capacitor, whether the capacitor is good or not. You can use the multimeter. You can just put the selector of the multimeter in the buzzer option and then check this 2 capacitors. If you get a continuity or if you hear a buzzer, then these capacitors are bad. So you can check the fuse and also the inductor. The inductor should give to you a buzzer or a continuity because the inductor is exactly like a fuse. And then here we have some PF capacitors that you can check using the same principle, working principle as the chemical capacitor. Okay, so to check the USB connector, you should check first this connector, the terminals inside the connector, then check the solder here. As you see, the soldering, is it good or not? Then check the fuse, as you can see, the fuse for each port or each connector, then the chemical capacitor, the inductors, then the IC. But to check the IC, you can just check this PF capacitor. If you find that this PF capacitor is shorted to the ground, means the IC is bad. Okay, the same working principle. For example, for this port in this motherboard, the first thing to check is the connector, the terminals inside the connector, then check the soldering here, as you can see, then you can check the inductors. As you can see, we have here inductors. You should get a buzzer by checking this inductor using the multimeter, then check the filtering capacitor. Okay, and of course here for this USB connector we have this IC U13. You can check it by checking the PF capacitor near to the IC. Okay, I want to add that sometimes you can find in the USB connector 5 volt in the pin number 1, but the USB connector still not working. Why? Maybe these two signals are missing. As you can see, USB data minus and USB data plus maybe are missing. If these two signals are missing, so maybe you have problem in the inductor. You should check the inductor. If the inductor is opened or cutted, this signal will be missed. But if you check these inductors and you find the inductors are good, then the problem maybe is in the ICH or in the circuit bridge. Maybe the USB connector inside the ICH is failed. Okay? But to confirm and to be sure, you should go and check other USB connector. For example, if you have in the motherboard 2 or 3 USB connectors, if you find all USB connectors stop working, even if the 5 volt exists, means the ICH or the circuit bridge is failed. Okay? But if you find just one USB connector are bad, but other are worked correctly, means you have problem maybe in this USB connector itself. Okay, or in one inductor here. Okay,